Let's go, girls. Nerd, 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 nerd. Hi, spooky pals. This is DJ.
And this is Paul.
And this is Crypts and Corks. Welcome to episode 1. Woo, woo, woo.
Party.
So, Paul, how was your week?
Not to start off on a bad note, but I was sick this week.
I know you were. You left me alone at work.
I did.
For 2 whole days.
I did. I'm so sorry. But look, I was dying. I visited the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2. I played with Harry's wand. It's a little thicker than you'd think. But beside the point, I was sick and I was dying.
Please don't get us sued by a transphobe. That is the worst way to get our podcast canceled.
Oh, yeah, I did forget she's canceled. Never mind. Well, we're keeping that in.
Yes, we are keeping that in. But, oh, my God. So, yeah, Paul, you've been sick and you're on medication, so you're not really drinking, which is kind of a buzzkill considering this is a drinking podcast.
I know, but I can have a good old sip and I can tell you guys what it tastes like and my thoughts, feelings, desires.
So, trigger warning, if I get a little unhinged and I start laughing at the terrible ending of this story, it's not me, it's the wine.
But before we get there, I need to know about your week.
My week, it wasn't too bad. Work did suck, just because with what we do, it involves a lot of what we review other people's work.
Yeah, we're analysts.
We're analysts, and before things are completed, we're the last line of defense. And unfortunately, the motto of this week was "Everyone's an idiot but me." And such as yesterday, I was supposed to complete 32 projects, no less than 29, and I only got 22 done. And most of those were done in the last 4 hours of our shift because nothing was completing because everyone is an idiot. And then just like the stresses of getting everything ready and equipment. And I do have to take my car registration to a local police station because I got pulled over 2 weeks ago. Ooh. And by Tuesday, I have to show them that I did get my car re-registered because it was out of registration by 2 days and they were threatening to write me a ticket.
Oh my gosh. These police are crazy.
He was, okay, so, like, it was truly cursed because, like, I'm driving, I'm going the speed limit, I don't run stop signs or red lights. And this cop is following me and he pulls me over and he comes up and he's super nice and he's like, "Good evening." And I'm like, "Good evening, officer. How can I help you?" And he's like, "I need to see your license and registration." And I'm like, "Okay, what's this about?" And he's like, "Don't worry. We're just going to like run back to the squad car and like pull this." Meanwhile, he has his partner who's like shining his flashlight through my car. And none of you can see me, but like I am a very effeminate, gay, white male. Like I think it was homophobia that got me picked on. But I sat there for like 15 minutes and finally he comes up and he like very rudely throws the registration license towards me. Not like actually throws, but like just like juts it into my face. And he goes, "Your registration expired 2 days ago. We're going to let you go with a warning, but you better bring your new registration or we're going to issue a warrant for your arrest."
What? That's to arrest you? Like,
and
girl.
For 2 days, like, literally it expired on a Friday and this was a Monday.
Oh my God.
Like, Friday was the last day, so Saturday, Sunday, Monday, like, it was 2 days.
Right. And let's say you weren't even driving the car. Like, why are they going to arrest you if you weren't even driving the car? Like, they have no proof. Like,
exactly.
If they arrest you and the car's in your driveway.
You and I mostly work from home.
Right. Like, what's the tea?
So, by Tuesday, they gave me 15 days. That was a Monday. That was 2 Mondays ago.
DJ!
No, it was 1 Monday ago. Well, yeah, Wait, hang on.
Either way, you're cutting it close.
Yeah, I was supposed to bring it over and drop it because it's a lot closer to you than it is me, and I was going to stop there on my way, and I did not remember until I was already halfway here. So that was my week.
We've both had really rough weeks.
Yeah, so on that note, are you ready for our tarot poll of the week?
Yes.
So every week we're going to do a tarot poll just to see how things are going, how they relate to the episode, and for what's going to go on for the coming weeks. So come on, Spirit, show us what's going on for the week.
Just in general.
Okay, I shuffled, and now the SMR.
Ooh, spicy. That was a spicy shuffle. Ooh, we got. Ooh.
Okay, this is not too bad. So we've got the Two of Swords, which I love the Two of Swords.
Yeah, me too. I love two swords.
We're not sword fighting, Paul.
Oh my god. Darn it.
Been there, done that.
That's for the OnlyFans. You gotta pay extra for that.
We don't have an OnlyFans, Paul. No, I love it because it's really indicative of two equal opposing forces meeting each other and realizing that there's no way out and coming together rather than fighting against one another.
You know, I've seen that video.
Oh my god. Way to take a beautiful sentiment and ruin it. Card number 2, Wheel of Fortune. Maybe one of us will win the lottery this week and then we won't have to work anymore.
But that one's about karma, right?
Is it about... I've always taken it as, like, good fortune's coming your way. Well, I guess it could...
I'll take the good fortune.
Although you are right. There is an upside and a downside to the wheel, so... Mm-hmm. Hopefully it's not... Maybe it means because we had a bad week, we're going to have a good week coming up.
Good, yes.
Which is good because... Am I allowed to say what we're doing this coming weekend?
Yeah.
So, Paul was a drag queen named Mafia, and...
Well, I still technically am.
And Mafia won a pageant, Queen of Queen City, 5 years ago?
Yeah, way back when I was 21. I'm 27 now, so I guess that's 6 years.
Yeah, and due to reasons which Paul will leave out of the podcast, Paul ended up leaving the organization, and he's been invited back, finally, to participate in this year's pageant, and I'm going along for moral support all the way to Cumberland, Maryland.
I know, yes. So, go follow Mafia Queen on Instagram. You can see pictures of the pageant. It's going to be a good one, the Queen of Queen City pageant in good old Cumberland, Maryland.
I think this means you're going to get lots of tips. Or at least that we're not going to break down or hit a deer on the way down.
Period.
And the last card is the Knight of Wands, and that's all about prudence and knowing when to act and when to stay back. So... I think that's telling me to not tell any of the people that I have to talk to on the phone at work on a day to kiss my lily white ass.
There you go. Yes. Self-control. It's important, especially in the workplace. Which, speaking of that, I think we need our own little HR department.
Yes. Oh my god, yes. But anyways, are we ready to do our paranormal pairing of the week?
Yeah. Bring it on.
Oh, you know what? Actually, now that I think about it, since you don't normally know what I'm going to discuss, I'm going to read the intro, and then I'll discuss the pairing.
All right, let's get into it.
All right, Paul. I'm going to tell you a story.
All right.
November 1967. Two couples set off to a local hangout in Lover's Lane when they ran into a being beyond all belief. Their sighting was just the beginning. For the next 13 months, their sleepy town in the Ohio River Valley would be overrun with sightings that defied logic and instilled fear into residents as strange visitors started to invade. Despite the fear and foreboding, nobody was prepared for the sightings to culminate in a disaster which still rings today. On this, our inaugural episode, we're going to discuss the one, the only, Mothman.
Dun, dun, dun!
So, now for our paranormal pairing, now that you know what we're going to do.
All right.
I have the Velvet Devil Merlot Vintage 2020 from Washington State.
Ooh.
Unlike most wines, it doesn't have a little description on the back. It just says land to hand, vineyard to bottle.
Oh, okay.
Which is neat. And like it has this neat I love the paper on it. Do you want to feel the paper?
Oh.
It's a very different for a wine
textured.
label. It's like almost like parchment.
Mm-hmm.
Very textural. It has a little pitchfork. But Merlot is a red, akin to Mothman's famous glowing red eyes. And really why I picked it was Mothman is sometimes described as being like a devil or being related to the Jersey Devil. And I just imagine being covered in all that gray-brown fur. He's kind of velvety.
Probably. Or maybe matte.
I mean,
He is in the wood.
I mean, velvet is matte. It's a very matte fabric. If you compare it to satin.
That's true.
And yes, I probably will sexualize Mothman throughout this episode.
As you should.
Despite what our title is, this bottle does not have a cork. It has a twist off. So we're gonna.
You don't even have to tell them that. You're ruining the illusion.
Well, I mean, they're gonna hear it when I do the crack. But I mean, sometimes cracks are more satisfying than corks opening.
I can agree with that.
Okay, our obligatory SMR. See, that sounded like a knuckle crack, which was very satisfying.
I agree. Yes.
Paul's not drinking, so I'm going to pour my glass so we can get the ASMR noise. Yes, that was a heavy pour. I'm drinking for two. Not because I'm pregnant, because I'm a gay man, but because Paul cannot. But he does get a taste.
And I will also say, DJ's a lot more fancy with his wines than I am. Usually my wine comes from a box.
I do not doubt if we do not start this Patreon too, and if we don't get people donating to us, that we will revert to box wine and be having Franzia's refreshing red or crisp white very often.
See, I'm down for that. I love some Franzia. Me and Franzia are homegirls. I went to high school with her.
Oh, Jesus. All right. Here's to the Mothman.
Ooh.
It's nice, a little dry, but not like terrible.
Yeah, and I don't really like dry wines. So this is like a nice, like, ease into dry.
Yes, I don't like a dry wine, but like I do like Merlot because it's not super sweet, but it's not like drinking shag carpet.
Right, exactly. Yes, this was very good. I would definitely recommend this.
The Velvet Devil Merlot.
The Velvet Devil Merlot. There you have it, guys. Give it a try.
All right, Paul. Are you ready for the initial sightings of the Mothman?
Yes.
So we're going to begin in... Oh my god, I already found a typo. Jesus Christ.
Illiteracy runs deep, I guess.
And you know what's really bad? I'm aspiring to be a novelist. And the other night, a friend of ours has been very invested in my novel, and he was like, I want to read your final chapters. I just don't have much time because I started a new job. And I was like, oh, I got all this podcast equipment. Let me just like record you a little audiobook. And I'm reading and I was like, what the fuck with all these typos?
It happens.
So maybe my dream career is just a pipe dream. So this was actually started in 1966, not 1967. So I apologize. Please do not at me.
Or do.
Please do not. I will cry. I am very fragile.
All publicity is good publicity, as my great-grandmother would say.
My Lexapro only controls my feelings so much. So we're going to begin with November 1st, 1966. Oh, motherfucker. I really should have, like, bulleted this better. Anyways, a National Guardsman at a National Guard base in the Ohio Valley is on patrol when he sees an impossibly large man-bird thing high up in some trees. And when I say high up in some trees, I mean, like, he is, like, these are the type of trees, like, this is outside a National Guard post. So obviously there are no low-hanging trees so you could possibly jump over the barbed wire fence to get in.
Right.
And also, have you ever climbed a tree, country boy?
Yeah, I grew up in the country. Yep.
Just wanted to make sure. we don't deal in stereotypes here. But as you get higher, the trees get more and more, or the branches get more and more fragile and hard to hold on to. And this is a big thing. And he looks around to see if anyone else is seeing this, and he sees no one. So he runs to get someone else, and by the time he gets back, and it's not very long, because this is a National Guard post, like, there are people patrolling every so many feet. This thing is gone, and there is no way that this thing would have been able to get from where it was to the ground or to another branch that quickly.
That's spooky.
And if you don't want to believe that, on November 12th, 1966, in Clendenin, West Virginia, 5 grave diggers are in a cemetery digging a grave, not their own grave, hopefully not mine after all the mistakes I've already made on this episode, when they see something really odd in the tree line, and it's this massive gray figure that's moving rapidly, but it's not moving rapidly through, like, around the ground. It's moving through the treetops itself. And what's really weird is it's winged, but the wings aren't moving. Now, what type of bird do you know where the wings just don't move, Paul?
Maybe a hawk? Or like an eagle? Or is that like...
No, you're very...
See,
if I remember...
they like glide, I think.
But they have to do it really high up.
Yeah.
And they do flap their wings.
That's true. See, I didn't go to school for geometry, so I don't know.
Oh my god. So now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of where things really start to hit the fan.
Okay, I'm ready.
November 15th, 1966. Merle Partridge and his wife are watching TV in their home in Salem, West Virginia, when suddenly the picture goes out before coming back in a herringbone pattern. You know, that's like the little triangles that all stick into one another.
On the television?
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but yeah.
So herringbone is like really, they're like arrows. But it's like a peaked arrow, and they fit right on top of each other. So it's like...
Oh, okay.
And the whole TV screen's like this. And this is 1966.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm sure they had static then. I don't know. I have to ask my grandparents. And I mean, they had those weird color mod block things that you see. But, like, a herringbone pattern. And a huge mechanical noise, kind like a shrieking noise, like a generator starting to whir up, started when Merle stood up to fix the TV, and the whole thing just blew out. Meanwhile, on the front porch, his hunting dog, who was a big, lean, heavy, muscular German Shepherd named Bennett, is just going wild, like barking in abject terror. So Merle is like, God fucking damn it, I'm trying to watch TV. My TV just broken, like, in the weirdest way possible. My dog's freaking out. And so, like, doing what any man would do, specifically my grandfather, oh my god, my grandmother would not grab a shotgun and run out of the house. Although I did find out that my grandmother has no survival skills when it comes to home invasion this week.
Oh, yes.
So... little tangent here. My brother moved to Texas in June of this year. Yeah, it's still 2023. And it absolutely broke my grandparents' hearts because a little bit about me. My mother died in 2015 when I was 18 and my brother was 15. And so, and my grandparents and us have always been close. And then just this past March, their other child, my Uncle David, passed away. And so, like, 3 months after he died, my brother's like, yeah, I'm going to move halfway across the state with no job and with no apartment. Sorry, Connor, not to dox you. But anyways, I work from home. I live with my grandparents. Not in a depressing, sad, I live in their basement way. I had a bad housing situation, and now I'm saving up money to get a really lit place. And also, they're old, and I'm taking care of them way. And they're getting ready to go out to lunch with some cousins, and I'm working. And I hear our garage door open and close, and I hear someone yell, hello. And about 20 minutes later, my grandmother leaves her bedroom. And I did not know this at the time I was working, but my brother showed me the video because he filmed all of our reactions. And my grandmother comes out of her bedroom and she stands there staring down the hall at this figure entirely dressed in black, just chilling in her living room. And rather than say something, rather than like walking back into the bedroom and like calling the police, she starts to walk towards him. Thank God it's my brother surprising her.
My gosh, she's like every white person in a horror movie.
Yeah, so maybe my grandmother would walk out on the porch when her German Shepherd just went crazy.
Yeah, I could see her doing. I mean, I could see me doing that also.
So,
'cause, like, it's that.
you know, it's really amazing that white people think they're the dominant race, like all those like white nationalists, considering they have no survival skills whatsoever.
Right.
But Merle Partridge, he was not a white supremacist, but he did have a shotgun because he lived in the country and he did enjoy hunting. He grabbed a flashlight and went out onto the porch and shines it towards the hay barn, which was about 100 yards away, which is about the length of a normal football field. And all he can see from that distance are two huge red eyes glaring back at him about the size of bicycle reflectors. And he's suddenly just paralyzed in fear, and he's like hypnotized. He wants to look away, he wants to run away, but he can't. And meanwhile, Bandit's at his feet, snarling and growling. And when Merle has the lights on, whatever this is, Bandit just takes off into the distance and after the figure. And Merle is just so shocked. And this is kind of like the instigating incident that pulls him out of the hypnosis. And he turns and he goes inside. And he goes straight to bed and he sleeps with a loaded shotgun. Now we're going to fast forward a little here and go to the next morning. He gets up and he's like, okay, I was spooked. And he goes out and he goes to find Bandit. Now, Bandit's a hunting dog. Bandit is used to not being chained up or on a leash, and he's used to running after creatures, and he comes back. Bandit's not back. And what's really weird there are paw marks running from the porch. It's late fall. Yeah, late fall. There's a lot of mud. And because West Virginia, this part of West Virginia is very much like Pittsburgh where we are. It rains a lot in the fall and the winter. And there are all of these pop tracks leading out to where the figure was, where they are no longer a straight line, but are going in a circle like he was chasing his tail. And then they disappear.
Huh.
There are no more paw prints. And there's no paw prints going back to the house. There's no paw prints going anywhere else. It's like Bandit was just disappeared or maybe picked up and lifted off by something.
I wonder what.
So, sorry.
No, I was just going to verify that the dog, it was a bigger dog, right?
Yeah, it was a German Shepherd.
Okay, because some of those smaller dogs, hawks and things, they can like swoop on down and snatch them.
Yes, and that will come in later. But I mean, this is a German Shepherd.
Okay.
This was a hunting dog. Mm-hmm. Like, he is trained to chase after things and probably chase after bears and things. I'm gonna burp. Excuse me.
The first one of the pod.
You're so welcome. I did do that right into the... Can you look at the recording? Just make sure it didn't register. We might have to cut that out.
We'll edit it in post.
Okay. So we're gonna go back to the evening of November 15th, 1966. Two newlywed couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Stephen Mary Mallet. I want to say Mallet because there's an E at the end, but I think it's pronounced Mallet. Mm-hmm. They decide that they're going to drive in Roger's 57 Chevy to the TNT area. And the TNT area is the McClintock Wildlife Preservation Area. I think I'm saying that right. I'm getting all those words right. And what it's a wildlife reserve. It's wildlife reserve. That's the right phrase.
Wildlife reserve. Okay, perfect.
And it's protected land, and it's about 7 miles north of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And in 1942, at the start of World War II, the government requisitioned it from the area and turned it into a ammunitions plant. And they built all of these huge bunkers, which were igloo-shaped, thus being nicknamed igloos, and covered in dirt and grass. So they just looked like hills from overhead. And in 1945, at the end of the war, basically the government and the military just packed up and shipped out and gave it back to the town. Very quickly, it became a local hangout. A lot of people like to drive. Like, this is the 1950s and the 60s. This is like when you didn't have TV, you didn't have video games. You just go for joy rides, and like they're all dirt roads, and like people still go mudding. So I'm not saying they were mudding, but like something very similar to mudding. And also there are a lot of little back roads and cozy little places to like park your car and snuggle up to your sweetie.
Right. And if you live in a small town, and you would know, like anyone who lives in a small town knows, if there's nothing to do, you're going in the woods, you're partying, you're using substances, like doing dirty things. Like,
so I did not grow up in a small town. Well, I did and I didn't. I grew up in a town in Pittsburgh called Bellevue, which is right over the city lines. And it had this cute, quaint little town feel, but it was really close to the city as well. But I dated a guy from Morgantown at one point, and on one of our dates, I lived with family because this was like college summer, and I lived with family, he lived with family, and we wanted to do something, and I was down there, and so like we drove out into the country to a cemetery.
Not the cemetery.
To the cemetery, and then after we were done doing what adults do in a cemetery at midnight, he goes, you know, I have family members buried in this cemetery, which was just the most romantic thing somebody could say to you.
Oh my God, what if did you guys do it on like the gravestone?
No, we did it in the backseat of my car.
Oh my God.
If you are my family, you did not hear that. I am a virgin.
Me too. The only thing I do in graveyards at night is read the Bible. Period.
The Satanic Bible. Anyways. Where was I? But so this place is local hangout. It's a lover's lane. And it was known as the spot to go when you were bored and hang out with people. And another thing that a lot of people in small towns do is they go to places like this and they'll have bonfires, or they'll park their cars in a circle with the headlights on, and they'll stand around and drink, and somebody will play music. Mm-hmm. But there was no history or folklore of the place being haunted.
Really?
No, it was just people knew like this was a munitions factory, which was a huge boost to the town's economy during World War II. Mm-hmm. But there was no like, oh, there's a gray lady out there, or like there's a headless horseman. No, it was just like a perfectly normal place. Mm-hmm. So it was really quiet. There are some people who do live in the area, because the thing about wildlife reserves are they're generally set out, they're generally set out a lot later than settlers arrive. Mm-hmm. So there are some people who live and farm in the area. Right. All the houses are dark. There's not really people out there. And there's nobody else. Excuse me, Jesus Christ. We just filmed our pilot before this and I chugged 3 glasses of champagne. I'm so sorry, everyone.
You know, it happens, and it's probably going to happen again. This is an alcohol drinking podcast. It comes with the territory.
So it's super quiet. Nobody's around. And they get to the North Power State plant, which is abandoned because this is a power plant that is no longer powering anything. When Linda noticed 2 huge red eyes and pointed out to the others. Mm-hmm. They look out the window, and it's this huge, massive man who's 6 to 7 feet tall with wings, and he's covered in brown or gray hair. And he has super muscular legs, and he's shying away from the light of the headlights. And they're staring at it, and they're like, oh my God, what is this? And they're absolutely paralyzed with fright when suddenly one of the women screams, and Roger, whose car it is, hits the accelerator, and the figure he was hobbling or shuffling towards the door, like he was walking very funny. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I believe it was Linda screamed, and that sort of broke them out of the trance, and Roger floors it, and they start driving. And luckily, they're really close to a gate to the area, and they get back on Route 62, which is sort of like the main highway that runs around this area. Mm-hmm. And as they're driving down Route 62, they saw the figure now on top of a hill in a field, and it spread its wings and it lifted straight off into the air.
So it's like levitating. It's not even really flying.
I wouldn't say it's levitating, because when you say levitating, you think floating.
Yeah.
This thing is lifting like a helicopter and then shooting after them.
Okay, so it's still using its wings.
It's using its wings, but kind of in the way that, not even that a jet, because I want to say in the way that a jet plane uses it, where, because jet planes and any kind of plane is really like a glider, except it has engines and propellers or jets that propel it. But this is a creature who just happens to have wings, and it's gliding with no sense of propulsion. So they did say, like, it maybe flapped its wings once or twice, but it's not flapping its wings like a bird.
Oh.
So this creature is pursuing them down the highway very easily. They're pushing 100 miles per hour, which is super fast. Like, I have to take the interstate to get home from here. And sometimes when it's late at night and nobody's around, I push 80 and it's too fast for me. Like, driving, I can't imagine anything. And like, that's 20 miles per hour heavier. I can't imagine anything keeping up with me.
Right. That's spooky.
Meanwhile, the entire time, this thing is making this loud, shrill, squeaking noise, which Mary Mallet described as squeaking like a giant mouse.
Okay, but I do that too, so like...
I mean, only with butt stuff.
Oh my gosh. You know, you read my diary.
That's just because you're a baby. Bottoms for the win. As soon as the car passed the city limit, right along the edge, like, they're all looking at the windows trying to see where this creature is going to come from. And I believe it was Mary Mallet saw very distinctly along the side of the road the body of a large dead dog. Aww. And so they crossed the line and the creature just stopped, like, no longer pursued them. So these are all young kids. They're all like in their late teens. Like, they are young. I don't think a single one of them had hit 20 yet.
Right.
And so, and like, this is a much different time where men are like very macho and like, and so even though they're scared, the men are like, we're going to go back. Like, it was probably like a bird or something.
Right.
So they actually go back, and as they cross the city lines, they very distinctly again see the body of a very large dog. Like, they're going much slower this time. And they see it. And very quickly, the creature bursts out behind a tree or a bush or something. And so they go fleeing back over the city limits. But again, the creature stopped right at the city limits. But this time, rather than stopping right over the city limits or shortly after, they drove straight to the Mason County Sheriff's Office. And they spoke to Deputy Millard Halstead, who, this is something he said to a reporter later on. I've known these kids all their lives. They've never been in any trouble, and they were really scared that night. I took them seriously. And this is a much different time and a much different area. So, like, one thing my grandparents always tell me is, like, when I, like, being single, they always say, like, you have time. And I always tell them, like, well, that's easy for you to say. When I was your age, you had 2 kids.
Right, exactly.
Like, this is a very different time. And, like, my grandmother was 21 and my grandfather was 20. Wait, no. My grandmother was nearly 24 when they got married, and my grandfather was nearly 22. So, like, and these kids are, like, 18, 19, maybe 20 years old. Right. So there's a lot of libido. We were all there once. Maybe you're there now.
Right.
Where you think, like, okay, I'm going to go back. But, like, these are 2 married couples. Like, these are people who are married. They have jobs. They have houses. I know the Scarberries actually, they were living in a trailer on their own at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, these are very serious people. And the thing to understand about Point Pleasant, like, there is a common misconception about people who are not from this area about, like, West Virginia and small cities in West Virginia where it's like these are all hillbillies. This is an industrial town. It's very serious people. It's a very prosperous town at this time. These are not hillbillies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of course, you have like some people up in the hills who probably we would think of as hillbillies, but these are very educated people who are working in heavy industrial fields.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very serious. So Halstead goes with the two couples back, and as they drove back, they looked for the body of the dog, but it was gone.
That's spooky.
And now, mind you, they saw this twice, and they weren't at the sheriff's office very long. They told Halstead, and then he said, okay, I'll come out and investigate with you. And when you're scared, you talk a lot faster.
Right.
So I can't imagine they were at the sheriff's office for very long.
Mm-hmm.
And this is 7 miles, so it's not very far away. So and this thing is gone without a trace. Like, there are no drag marks. It's like something picked up this heavy, large dog carcass with ease, but with no tracks. So they returned to the power plant, and Halstead shined a light all around the area, but saw nothing. But the couple saw strange shadows in the trees, and there was a nearby coal yard. Excuse me, goddamn these burps. So a dust cloud, like, out of a coal yard. It's not right there, it's a little distance away, but, like, this is a very still night. And for, like, a dust cloud to get kicked up, something had to have moved.
Right.
So Halstead is really hesitant to go into this thing. This is a police officer. This is an area that's not normally haunted. He's not scared of much, but he's scared, and he really doesn't want to investigate. So he decides to kind of buy time. He goes and he turns on his police radio to call in when a strange screeching noise blared out of the radio. Mm-hmm. And the Scarberries and the Mallets said, that's what we heard. That's the creature.
Oh my gosh.
So they leave because Halstead's not investigating this thing alone. The couples are not going into the building. Mm-hmm. So they return back to the sheriff's office, and all four of them are separated, and they all give separate statements, and they all corroborate, which is telling something, because if they had made this up, you would have heard, oh, it was 7 feet, it was 8 feet, it was 10 feet tall. You would have heard it was dark gray, it was light gray, it was black.
Right.
Like, that's just how it goes, but they all saw the same thing. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, for any of the skeptics out there, they might say a shared hallucination. But even with a shared hallucination, there are going to be little details that don't match up.
Right, exactly.
So, we're going to go into Mothman Goes Viral.
Ooh.
So, the following day, Sheriff George Johnson held a press conference regarding the incident. One of the reporters stated the description made the creature sound like something out of the popular Batman comic books and TV show, and coined the name Mothman. However, up to this point, nobody described it as being like a moth. They actually more described it as being either a bird or a bird man.
But that doesn't have the same ring to it.
It doesn't. And a huge source for me, as I read, was the Mothman Prophecies by John Keel. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the way that it's described is the bird. Like it was a man, it was and like just the description, like it didn't really have a neck. Like the head was attached right to the body, is very bird-like. And so people really, rather than calling it Mothman, called it the bird. But the Point Pleasant Register ran the front page article with the headline, "Couple sees man-sized bird, ... creature, ... something." This is a very serious newspaper. This is not a tabloid. This is not the Inquirer. It's not the Worldwide News. So for it to run this as a front page, they really took it seriously.
Right. Especially like they want see small town newspapers. They tend to like not do like I say this coming from a small town. My newspaper all serious, like no BS, like anytime. They're not playing into any hype like over something like that they probably won't be real, because there's a lot of crazies down in Appalachia, you know. And honestly, a lot of people like that probably who say things like that don't get believed, because there's a lot of crazies down in the Appalachian area, you know? Mm-hmm. So again, like you said, for them to print that does like...
And I mean, I think that really, going back to like this is not hillbillies, like when I was in high school and I was learning about the Great Depression and the all the New Deal works, one of the things my teacher told me was like, oh yeah, you know, like in Appalachia, it was really backwards. Like they found whole communities up in the mountains who were still speaking Elizabethan English. Like thee and thou and ye. Like, and like, that's like to present day. So like, you cannot stress enough that these are very serious people. Like these are people who had steady jobs and went to school. Like this could be any town USA.
Right.
So the sightings just grow from there. So I have some here to report to you. Okay. So the first is Connie Carpenter. And Connie Carpenter is really important because she's one of the only eyewitnesses to report having seen Mothman in broad daylight. Mm-hmm. It was on Sunday, November 27th at 10:30 a.m. She was driving home from church and she was passing a local golf course when she saw a man standing near the road. But as she approached, she realized it was not a man. It was a huge gray figure with wings and glowing red eyes. Now, the eyes really got her. Like, she went into a trance and she was absolutely terrified, but she could not look away. Suddenly, the creature took off in flight and started swooping towards her car. And she was able, I really don't know if I want to say this because this is just John Keel's report, but he said that she was very fragile and prone to hysterics. Mm-hmm. But apparently she went absolutely, like, in abject terror. She, like, first of all, she nearly ran off the road just from being hypnotized. And then apparently, like, in abject terror and his quote-unquote hysteria, mm-hmm. She drove off. But what's really interesting about this sighting, other than that she saw in broad daylight, was she got conjunctivitis. Paul, do you know what conjunctivitis is? And no, it's not an STI.
No, I have no clue.
Conjunctivitis is the scientific term for pink eye. And the thing about pink eye is it can be caused by like bacteria within the eyes, or it can be caused by exposure to radiation or UV rays.
Okay.
And John Keel actually writes that when he met her a little over a week after she had this sighting, her eyes were still red and watery and nearly swollen shut.
Oh my gosh.
Like, this is bad. Like, I never had pink eye, but like, I knew kids growing up who had pink eye. My aunt got pink eye when my cousin was little. And like, normally your eye does not swell shut.
Right, that had to have been like intense.
Which leads itself to like radiation or exposure. Mm-hmm. So John A. Keel is a huge figure in this. He was a New York City-based 14 writer and ufologist. And he actually came after speaking to Gray Barker, who was another ufologist in town. And he came, and on his first day there, he met the Scarberrys, the Mallets, Carpenter, her fiancé, Keith Akers, and Mary Heyer, who is Connie's aunt. And Mary Heyer is a local newspaper reporter. So she becomes so she starts out, John Keel, it's actually really funny, because he says he took an instant disliking to her, thinking that she was the town busybody. Mm-hmm. Because she was the local newspaper reporter, but they ended up becoming really close friends. And I would say in John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecy, she's almost like the secondary character beyond John Keel. She comes up so much. But he takes her as the town busybody, but they actually become really good friends. But more than that, she's Connie's aunt.
Oh. Huh.
And so he's discussing it with them, and they describe it, and he actually convinces the Scarberrys, the Millettes, Carpenter Acres, and Hire to go out with him to the North Power Plant. Mm-hmm. So they get there, and they're describing the scene, and Keel says, I want to go inside. And the Scarberrys, the Mallets, and Hire say, we don't want to go in there. And Connie and Acres say, we'll go in with you. So they go in, and Connie's really upbeat. She's making jokes, like, laugh so you don't cry. And it's an old boiler plant because you used to do electricity through steam. And they're shining the light in the boilers, looking for a nest or a den. And there's nothing. So they decide to leave. And so the way John Keel describes it is there is a smaller room where there's the exit, and then you enter the boiler room, which is a much larger room. And let me see if I have it here. Connie is just about to leave the large boiler room to go into the smaller vestibule to leave, when she happens to look over her shoulder and she screams, those eyes, he's here. And she just breaks down. She has a complete breakdown. She's so scared. Keel and Acres don't really have time to look around because Connie's so upset. And so they grab her and they immediately rush her outside. And Keel immediately runs back in with a flashlight, and he's looking around and he can't find anything. Mm-hmm. And he goes over the entire building, and like this building has catwalks and stairs, and he goes over the entire building top to bottom. And he goes back outside and he finds the group in the state of just sheer panic. And they were actually joined by Deputy Alva Sullivan. I don't know. It might have been Alvin, and it might be a Tal. We're just going to go with Deputy Sullivan.
Yeah.
Please don't dox me. And Mary Hire says that they saw a large figure running out of the building, but from the opposite direction. They said, was that you? And he says, no, I was inside the entire time.
Ooh.
Also there, I don't know how I forgot to mention this, but Mabel McDaniel, who is Linda Scarberry's mother, is there. And she says, we heard this huge noise. It was hollow. It was metallic. And it sounded like something heavy and metal was dropped from the top of the building to the bottom. And he said, I never heard it. And I didn't make it. Mm-hmm. And at this point, Mary Mallet realizes her ear's bleeding.
It popped her eardrum, yeah.
And, well, it's either a popped eardrum, but even when your eardrum pops, it doesn't bleed. It's a sign of a concussion. And Mary Mallet did not have a concussion when she went there. Mm-hmm. And they all agree that there's a change in atmosphere. Like, they feel like the air pressure has changed. Like, it just feels heavy and oppressive. And John Keel actually writes, he was like, maybe the entire the air pressure on the entire area changed, and that's what caused it. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into this later when I talk about John Keel's book. But they left, and Mary Mallet had to be treated for a concussion. Actually, Linda Scarberry, I believe I'm getting this right, had a complete mental breakdown and had to go into a hospital and seek psychiatric treatment. It was so bad. She had a complete breakdown over this. Just the entire incident. And it was really bad because, like I said, her and Roger were living on their own in a trailer, and she started having nightmares, and it was so bad that they moved back in with her parents, the McDaniels. They had a basement apartment, which really became a focal point for the sightings, and John Keel visited the McDaniels house a lot, and that was sort of his focus. Marcella Bennett, this is really one of the most compelling sightings. Her and her brother and sister-in-law drove into the TNT area where they had relatives who lived there, and they got there and they got out of the car and they went up to the door, and they actually found out that the couple they were visiting, the Wamsleys, were not there. And they spoke to the kids who were left home alone, and they were starting to return from the car when a figure got up from the ground by the trunk of the car. Excuse me, god damn these burps. Oh my god, I just want to smother myself to death.
Oh my god.
And she's sort of leaving. She has her baby Tina in her arms. And when this figure gets up, it fixes huge, glowing, hypnotic red eyes on her. And she's absolutely paralyzed. And she's paralyzed to the point where she actually drops her baby Tina on the ground.
Oh my gosh. Was the baby okay?
So John Keel says that the baby was more insulted than injured.
I would be too, honestly.
It wasn't like a newborn baby. She was a couple months old. So like she was like near toddler age, but not quite there yet.
Oh.
And actually she was so hypnotized, she then fell on top of Tina.
No.
And the figure starts up. So she described it as the figure was standing there as if waiting for her to approach, but after she fell, it started approaching her. Her brother grabbed her and stood her up, and she was able to grab Tina, and they ran inside, and the creature actually pursued them onto the porch and looked into the window. And so it's Marcella Tina, who is her baby daughter, her brother and sister-in-law, and 3 children, the 3 Wamsley children. And so they're in absolute panic. And this is actually, I believe, this is the 16th or the 17th of November of 66. And so there are a ton of people in the TNT area looking for the creature. And John Keel writes that they were a mile or less than away from where everyone was looking. And they called the police, and by the time the police got there, the creature was gone.
Oh my gosh.
And so you'll find out with this, it's all a bunch of near misses.
Mm-hmm.
Bob's Bosworth, who is a local volunteer firefighter, and his friend, who is also a volunteer firefighter, were riding motorcycles through the TNT area. And it was a full moon night, and it was so bright that they actually turned the headlights on their motorcycles off because it was so bright. As they were going past the power plant, they noticed 2 red eyes on the top of the power plant, and they thought that this was kind of weird because the power plant no longer had power.
Right.
So they pulled up to the building to investigate, and the eyes shifted to look down at them, so they knew it wasn't like an electrical light, like a fixed light point. So they went inside, and on one of the catwalks, they could hear deliberate and determined steps coming near them. The figure stopped near them, just outside of the light of a window, but they could just make out a large figure with wings.
Mm-hmm.
And they were sort of stopped, and they had to stare off, and then the figure walked off towards a different catwalk for a little bit, and then they could hear it take off into flight off the catwalk, at which point they left. Faye DeWitt was driving with her siblings in the TNT area, and I actually saw an interview with her. Mm-hmm. And as she described it, she was sitting in the passenger seat, her brother is driving, and she looked outside the window, and she saw it directly parallel with the passenger side window, and she could not tell if it was running or flying because all she could do was stare into its glowing red eyes. Her brother veered her car around the turn, and the creature stayed with them. He veered again, and the creature jumped on the hood of the car and stared at them. They were really close to the power plant, and the creature lifted off the hood and directly onto the roof. And now, this building, it's not a 1-story building. It's not a 2-story building. It's a 3 or 4-story building. So for this creature to lift directly off the hood, which isn't even half of a story, mm-hmm. and on to directly the roof, which if it's a 4-story building, that's 5 stories right there.
Yeah, that's high.
Her brother got out of the car and started to throw rocks at the creature, and it just watched. And it sort of stooped, and one rock didn't hit it, but landed near it, at which point it stood up, at which point they got back in the car and fled. On November 17th, a 17-year-old boy was pursued for a mile by
A long time. Get your exercise, girl.
He was driving.
Oh, well, never mind.
So
that's not impressive.
The thing that you notice with these stories is the Mothman really delights in chasing cars.
Oh, it's like a game.
Yeah. Which birds don't pursue cars. They fly away from cars.
Right.
But he was pursued for over a mile while driving on Route 7. 5 teenagers saw it while they were driving along Campbell's Creek. The creature quickly scurried off from the woods when it saw its head's lights. An elderly businessman woke up to find the Mothman standing in his front yard. And he just stared at it for a couple minutes and went inside. Like, he just stared at it and then calmly went inside. But when he went inside, he was so pale, his wife thought he was having a heart attack.
Oh my gosh.
On November 24th, 2 adults and 2 kids saw it as they were driving past the TNT area. On November 25th, Thomas Urey saw it in a field just north of the TNT area. As he passed, it took off into flight and started circling over him as it drove, but he kept dive bombing and swooping at the car. He said, quote, he felt a, quote, a weird kind of fear, the kind that gripped you and held you. Like, even after the incident, he was gripped by fear.
Spooky.
This is to sort of describe, like, how far away this creature was seen. George Wolfe Jr. of Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, which is only, like, maybe an hour from here. It's a lot closer to here than Point Pleasant.
Right.
Saw a 7-foot tall bird while hunting, and his dog actually pursued it, and the dog chased after it and, like, went into the brush, got close to it, and then came running back, whimpering with its tail between its legs.
Okay.
Mrs. Ruth Foster of St. Albans, which is a small suburb outside of Charleston, West Virginia, saw him near her front porch. Sheila Kane and her little sister saw it near the local junkyard, and it pursued them in flight as they ran home. They're running on foot, and this creature's pursuing them.
Oh my gosh, that'd be so scary.
And Mrs. Mabel McDaniel, once again, Mother Linda Scarberry, saw him on January 11th, 1967, over Route 62. And actually, she thought it was a hallucination because she had been living with her son or her daughter and son-in-law. And she was like, I've heard this story so many times. I'm just so predisposed to seeing it. And it was only after a conversation with John Keel where John Keel realized that she had not hallucinated it because her details were absolutely on par with all the other descriptions. And John Keel was interviewing people who were not just the Scarberries.
Mm-hmm.
And on November 2nd, 1967, Mrs. Virginia Thomas saw him outside her kitchen window in the TNT area. He walked right up to her kitchen window, and
He said, what you got in there?
And she was absolutely terrified. And then she started having weird dreams, and all the weird dreams were centered around the local Ohio River. And now, she wasn't the only one having weird dreams. Everyone in Point Pleasant were having bad dreams or a really bad feeling of foreboding. And actually, in November 1967, November 19th, 1967, actually, John Keel came back to Point Pleasant and was talking to Mary Heyer. And she said, I quote, I had a terrible nightmare. There were a lot of people drowning in the river and Christmas packages were floating everywhere in the water. It was like something awful. It's like something awful is going to happen. And actually, when he got to town, and this is a town he's been visiting a lot over the past year, he said the entire town was just under this cloud of panic and foreboding, like something terrible was going to happen. And John Keel goes into this long description of he thought that a chemical plant along the river might explode, and then he thought that the Pope at the time was actually going to be murdered in the Middle East or in the Philippines. And none of that had actually happened, although an assassination attempt was actually made on the Pope in a way that was described to him exactly as he had foreseen it.
Oh.
We're not going to get into that with this episode.
Okay.
And finally, he was plagued by these weird phone calls. There were a lot of Men in Black sightings around the area. And so finally, he was told that a nationwide blackout was going to occur on December 15th, 1967, at the moment when President Lyndon B. Johnson turned on the official Christmas tree outside the White House. So as anyone who doesn't know, there's a big The national Christmas tree is on the ellipse right outside the White House. There's a ceremony where the president switches it on. And John Keel got super prepared for this. Oh my God. That really scared me. This is what happens when a scaredy cat does a paranormal podcast.
For those listening, there was a door. I live in an apartment building, and a door slammed on the outside.
Ooh, spooky. So Keel was super prepared for a blackout. But on December 15, 1967, there was actually a broken traffic light. There were actually two. So so the Ohio River separates Point Pleasant from Gallipolis, Ohio. And the main thoroughfare was the Silver Bridge. And it's actually really funny because there was a broken traffic light on the Ohio side. And John Keel reports that on the Point Pleasant side, it was long-standing that their traffic light was broken. It always seems to stay red, and a lot of people just ran it because it would stay red for so long. But on the other side of the bridge, the traffic light's also broken. And it's about 5 o'clock. And the bridge is covered because even though it's a state border, these are two cities very close to one another. People are constantly going back and forth for work, to visit relatives, to go Christmas shopping. This is 10 days away from Christmas, or whatever seasonal holiday. I swear to God, you keep looking at your back door, which has a frosted glass window, and I'm terrified.
Oh, there's nothing out there.
Stop looking at it. Where was I? People are constantly going across. And now the thing about the 60s, cars were... Stop looking at the door. You did that on purpose.
I did. I'm sorry. Keep going.
You did. I watched you because you made direct eye contact with me, which you never do. And then you looked.
One of my greatest joys in life is spooking DJ, because it's easy.
This paranormal podcast is become... Oh my God.
It's going to be your new trauma.
It's going to become a true crime podcast, but I said, oh my God, because I tried to pour the wine with the cap still on.
You know... Done it before. We've all been there, you know.
You know, that's a pretty good analogy of what my dating life was like.
You tried to pour it, but the cap was on.
I'm pouring it, the cap's on.
Same.
So traffic is at an absolute standstill on this bridge. Excuse me. And cars are really heavy in the 60s. Like, if you've ever seen a 60s... Jesus Christ, the burps.
You gotta work through it, DJ.
Hang on.
You gotta be like freaking Mariah Carey in that national...
Hang on, I'm gonna take a moment to catch my breath and stop burping. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm gonna give you a topic.
Alright.
The radical reconstruction of the South following the Civil War was neither radical nor reconstructive. Discuss.
There were a lot of R words in that sentence.
Yes, there were. Are we ready to continue on?
Onomatopoeia.
You mean alliteration?
Sorry, I didn't go to school for math. That is alliteration. I promise. You know what? Just keep going. We're just going to keep going for it.
So this bridge was built in 1928 when the standard car was the Model T, which was a fairly small car. It was more carriage than car. And
Me too, bitch.
I don't know what you are, Paul. I told you this was going to happen. I predicted. I was like, I'm going to get really giddy around the sad part of the story.
Okay, well, let's get to the sad stuff.
We're going to take a moment here.
Okay.
We're going to think about the ASPCA with the sad puppies.
In the arms of an angel, I don't know the rest.
Okay. So cars in the 60s and the 50s were really big and heavy. And the bridge just wasn't made for that type of car. And it had a habit of shaking. Like, when a lot of cars were going over, it was shaking. And all day people were reporting that it was shaking a lot more than usual. And on the bridge, at around 5 we're going to say 5:03 p.m. at the height of rush hour. Cars are bumper to bumper standstill on it. And it started to shake really violently. And Charlene Wood had just pulled onto the bridge, and the shaking was so bad. She threw it into reverse and only made it 4 feet before her car stalled because of the shaking. And a lot of people actually said that they thought that a boat going underneath had hit one of the supports, the legs, is that's what it's called?
Yeah, probably.
And that's what caused the violent shaking until at 5:04 p.m., the entire bridge just collapsed with a great spark from the electrical lines that ran over it. And it dumped all of these cars. 31 cars were just toppled into the freezing Ohio River. And people knew immediately. People said some people thought it was an explosion. Some people thought that a jet plane had gone down. All the lights in town had flickered due to the power lines going down.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, Charlene Wood, when she had pulled back, her tires were like less than a foot from the precipice, and she was pregnant with with a child.
That's so scary. Oh my god.
So 31 cars went into the river. In total, 46 people died, 2 of whose bodies were never found to this day.
Oh, that's sad.
And what's really interesting was Mothman was seen flying near the bridge in the days leading up to the disaster. And it was 13 months to the day of the first big sighting by the Scarberries and Mallets of Mothman. And he just disappeared, and he's never been seen in Point Pleasant again.
Oh my gosh.
Now, before I get into some theories, I'm going to go into Mothman sightings since Point Pleasant.
I thought you said he disappeared. What's going on here, DJ?
I said he disappeared from Point Pleasant.
False information.
Fake news!
I'm sorry. Keep going.
Miners reported seeing a creature matching the description of Mothman at the mine entrance in Freiburg, Germany. The figure blocked their entry to the cave by staying there and hissing at them whenever they approached. And it just would hiss and shriek at them until they moved away from the entrance. And a short time later, an underground explosion went off. This was a coal or oil mine. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't go down there. And as happens, a spark sets off whatever fuel is down there, and it exploded. So this once again ties in. So not only does the description match, but the sort of forewarning of evil or a terrible event happening.
Mm-hmm.
A large black figure was seen flying in the skies over the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the days before the nuclear meltdown in 1986.
Really?
And those who've seen it were actually plagued by horrible nightmares.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know Chernobyl. Okay, that's crazy.
Yeah, and it wasn't until late. A lot of people called it the Black Bird of Chernobyl, and they didn't relate it till later. A figure matching the description was also seen flying around the Twin Towers in early September 2001, and also seen flying through the smoke and debris after the first tower had fallen on September 11th, 2001. Paul, I swear to God, if you say Bush did 9/11 right now, I'm going to scream.
No, I'm keeping it clean for the pod.
Because this just proved Bush did not do 9/11. Mothman did.
Oh my god, I need that on a t-shirt.
You really didn't expect me to say that, did you?
I know, I need that on a t-shirt.
He was seen in Minneapolis in 2007, just a month before the I-35 West Bridge collapsed.
Oh wow, not the I-35.
In April 2009, villagers of La Junta, Mexico, reported seeing a large, hairy, bipedal creature arrive at the village. One student was actually chased for after 15 minutes by the creature.
Really?
Yeah, which I love kids, but like, there's just something about like imagining a 6-year-old being chased by Mothman in a circle. Wah! Wah!
Now that's like a chihuahua and a hawk.
It probably was. But within days, an illness started to break out in the village, and it was later identified as the H1N1 virus, which became a global health crisis, also known as swine flu.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
I do too. I had it and I nearly died.
Ooh, spooky.
When we do near-death experiences, I'll describe that.
Looking forward to it.
In 2010, History Channel's Monster Quest investigated sightings of the Mothman near La Crosse, Wisconsin. In 2016, a new resident of Point Pleasant took photographs of a flying figure resembling Mothman around Route 2, which, we all know what happened in late 2016. We don't need to bring that up.
Yep, moving on.
In 2017, and we all know what happened in early 2017, specifically on January 20th. Don't need to bring up that terrible thing. Reports of a winged humanoid with red eyes peaked in the area around Chicago. And now, unlike all these other... Okay, so I did go to Beaver Falls once to tour college, Geneva College. But other than that, the only place mentioned today that I have been in Chicago, and I'm very disappointed that I did not see Mothman there.
That is disappointing.
Of course, I think it's safe to say Mothman is nocturnal, and in the evenings I was mostly crawling drunkenly back to my hotel or my friend's apartment from gay bars.
As one does in Chicago.
Shout out to Mike.
Love Mike. He's a big friend of the pod.
In August 2001, workers at the Wisconsin State Fair reported seeing Mothman near the main stage while cleaning up.
Ooh.
Now, Mothman is generally described as a man-like being. Sturdy with sturdy legs, gray or grayish brown, with wings of 10 to 12 foot wingspan with glowing red eyes. All of them have described it as being that. There's no discrepancy in the description.
That's crazy.
People have seen the Mothman experience a number of strange symptoms. So, like, I've seen scary things like lions and tigers and bears, like, and ghosts. Like, I've had paranormal experiences, but I didn't have any lingering side effects. But they had side effects. They had nightmares, feelings of dread and impending doom, eye burn, loss of a sense of time. That elderly businessman, he does not know how long he stood there, but his wife reported as being 15 to 20 minutes, and he had no idea how long he was staying there. Physical injury from his screech, Mary Millett's concussion, and extreme physiological distress lasting to a few days to years after the encounters. And actually, I think I have this later here. No, I don't. But Linda Scarberry had to be institutionalized for a while due to a nervous breakdown. A number of witnesses died within 10 years of seeing Mothman.
Mm-hmm.
A number of them continue to have nightmares, near psychic phenomena, senses of doom, premonitions such as that. Let's go into the legacy. In 1975, John Keel, our journalist and ufologist, published the Mothman Prophecies. He actually promoted the theory that Mothman, UFOs, and other phenomena around this incident were actually as part of he doesn't believe in extraterrestrials like aliens. He believes in ultra-terrestrials and a higher psychic consciousness that all bind us.
Okay.
We'll get more into that into a later episode.
Yeah, because that sounds wild.
The film was adapted in 2002 into a movie starring Richard Gere and Laura Linney. Mm-hmm. Richard Gere, who is really famous, I think, to most of the most famous movie I can think of him being is Pretty Woman with Julia Roberts. Jesus. And Laura Linney, I love her. She was in the HBO series, I think it was HBO, The C Word. She's in a couple other movies. Okay. Love her. And that really brought Mothman to a new and wider audience. And actually, Paul and I both live in the Pittsburgh area, and most of the film was filmed in the Pittsburgh area here.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah, so I think for bonus content, we should watch the movie because I've never seen it, and
I've seen the movie.
I have not.
It's a good one. I would recommend. We will definitely.
So maybe we'll watch that for bonus content, and yeah. In 2002, the same year that the movie came out, Point Pleasant held its first annual Mothman Festival, which they still hold today. And in 2003, a 12-foot statue of the Mothman was unveiled, its design being taken directly from eyewitness accounts.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And also, I hear the statue has a phenomenal ass, and I think this is one of the reasons why so many people sexualize Mothman.
I mean, the way you describe him, he sounds like a leather daddy, honestly.
He's very much a leather daddy.
He sounds like he would show you a good time and then take you out for a steak afterwards. And you know what? I'm here for that. I am very much here for that.
In 2005, the Mothman Museum and Research Center opened in Point Pleasant. And honestly, Paul, I think for our 1-year anniversary, which I don't know whether we want to go off by, we're actually recording this on the 23rd of September or by October 1st, which is when we're launching this for spooky season. I think for our first anniversary, we should go down to Point Pleasant, tour the TNT area, and go to the museum and research center.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Wait,
we have to do that again.
Awesome.
There.
That was a high five for you audio listeners.
So let's get into theories. So this is not a skeptic podcast. I believe in Mothman in some shape or form. But I will give it to you skeptics out there. Mm-hmm. And do not come for me in those reviews on iTunes. I will find you and I will gut you like a fish.
Don't threaten our listeners yet.
I'm not threatening our fans. Just those people. So I listen to a lot of paranormal podcasts, and I know that there are skeptics who probably will just see that I'm talking about Mothman and comment something nasty. If you're one of those people, we're not here for you. We're here to talk about something that we love and provide entertainment to other people who love this subject matter. Please do not come here with your hoodoo, voodoo, scientific... And I'm not saying like voodoo hoodoo and like actual like voodoo and voodoo, like the actual practice and religion. I'm talking about like, please don't come at me with your like, oh, like it was a weather balloon. Like, I don't want to hear it.
Period. We're here for fun.
So let's get into some theories. The most notable one is that it was a sandhill crane or a heron out of migration. So sandhill cranes and herons are very large birds with a 10-foot wingspan. And they actually have a red, fleshy, feathery part around their eyes. But the thing is, they're white. So how can you say that it's gray? Or like that would have to be one dirty bird to say it's gray. And also, sandhill cranes are... when they stand, they're nowhere near 6 to 7 feet tall. Mm-hmm. And they have bird legs, and bird legs are notoriously thin. Like, everyone who described it as being man-like with sturdy legs.
I don't believe the birds.
We don't believe the bird.
No.
Same thing with another thing that was brought up were barn owls. Once again, large wingspan. They have red eye glow. Eye glow is the... people actually have it, and people have red eye glow. And that's like, for those of us who are millennials like me and Paul, when you had those disposable cameras with the flashes in the 90s and the early 2000s, your eyes would come back red and you kind of looked like a demon. That's eye glow. And it happens with animals too, where you shine lights on them. And a lot of owls do have red eye glow, and they do screech, but they flap their wings. And owls have very small bodies. Even the largest one is only a couple feet tall.
Right.
Let's go into an alien. Personally, I don't like this. I think if it was an alien,
Well, why do they think it's an alien?
Okay. So actually, Mothman's strange appearance and flying habits lend themselves to an out-of-this-world explanation. Mm-hmm. The fact that he was so large and bulky looking, and the fact that his wings didn't flap, according to physics, he should not be able to fly. It's kind of like a bumblebee. Mm-hmm. It kind of leads itself to an out-of-this-world experience. And there were also a large number of UFO sightings and Men in Black in and around Point Pleasant during this time. The Mothman prophecy, like very early on in this, is when Indrid Cold, who is a very famous out-of-this-world being, came into prominence with Woody Derenberger. That's actually recounted here in the Mothman prophecies. But I don't know. I think if it was an extraterrestrial, it would need some kind of helmet to be here. Nobody describes seeing a helmet.
I don't know. It would explain the radiation thing.
It would explain the radiation, but we're going to get into that in a second. And also, even John Keel, who is a ufologist, he believed in extraterrestrials, but he didn't believe that this was an instance of extraterrestrials. He believed in ultra-terrestrials, which was that there are just some people who are more cyclically inclined, and that there is some higher power amongst the human race.
Oh, okay.
We'll get into that another time. I think we have to do an entire episode on John Keel because he's a really interesting guy.
Yeah.
And I have the book, The Mothman Prophecies, here. I'm going to try and get Paul to read it. I read it before in the initial inception of the podcast, and then I got my own copy to mark up for this. And actually, it's really funny because John Keel was so hyped. He was a ufologist, so he's so hyped up on the UFOs that Mothman takes up a very small part of this book, which... I'm going to give Paul the book right now and just flip through, and you can see all my red underlines and brackets. And you can see...
Oh, yeah, I do see.
It's a lot of just black and white, not a lot of red.
Yeah.
So that's going to lead us into our next topic. An experiment got wrong or a mutant from the TNT area. So the TNT area, the McClintock Wildlife Reserve, was used as a munitions plant during World War II. Who's to say whether or not the government was doing secret experiments in there? What if this was the Captain America super soldier experiment gone wrong? And throughout the 70s, scientists discovered just how polluted the area was. Like, they found redwater seepage. Like, there's a place called Pond 13, and it's known to be super, super polluted to this day. Mm-hmm. In 1981, the EPA added the area to the very top of its Superfund list of areas in the United States that needed to be cleaned up.
Oh my god.
And this is in the Reagan area when Reagan, just absolutely, shit posted all over the good parts of the government. The fact that the EPA was like, this place is really fucked up.
Oh my god.
And some of you might be asking yourself, would the government really leave behind some kind of experiment? Well, yes, because in 2010, an entire bunker of left behind ammunitions exploded.
Oh my god.
So if they're willing, and here's the thing, we don't use TNT in warfare nowadays, but in 1945, we're still using it. Why wouldn't you take that with you?
Right.
Because, in 5 years or less, we were in the Korean War, so why wouldn't you take that with us for the next war?
Right.
And even if it wasn't, so much pollution, that could have caused some creature or person to be mutated.
Right, you never know who's going to wander into that building and mess with that TNT that you're just...
It's not even the building, it's water sources. This could have been, a bird that I don't even know. But I very much believe in the experiment gone wrong.
Right. I could see that very much so.
Can we pause the recording? I actually really have to pee. Okay, and we're back. Sorry about that. I've had a lot to drink today. Our next point, and I am so sorry to get into this because I even have to admit to myself that the Native American peoples of the United States have gotten an absolutely raw deal from the white settlers. And this next theory is just really a case of I'm going to say, I don't even want to say whitewashing, but like put a Caucasian, I don't even know. I'm just going to describe it. So in 1774, Point Pleasant was the location of the Battle of Point Pleasant between settlers and the local Shawnee tribe. And there was a lot of fighting between the Native Americans and the settlers in this area and all across the nation as we settled. Because despite what anyone wants to say, white people came here and stole land off the Native Americans. In the early Revolutionary War, the chief of the Shawnee tribe, Chief Cornstalk, promoted a position of neutrality in the war, not choosing the side of the American settlers nor of Great Britain. But nonetheless, him and his son were captured by local settlers and held at Fort Rogers, I believe it's called. And by settlers. And they were actually murdered in retaliation for the death of a white man after he was killed by a different tribe, which that is probably the most white person ever is. Well, they're all Indians.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Legend has it that Chief Cornstalk, as he was killed, he was actually killed after his son. He was said to have uttered a curse on the land that is now Point Pleasant, which is said to linger to this day, which there is a really great on Disney Plus. It's National Geographic, and I can't remember what it's called, but they do a whole episode on Point Pleasant and the Ohio Valley, and just how it's plagued by floods and other natural disasters, and now there are plants and that are causing cancer to the residents because it's leaking pollution to the water.
Oh my gosh.
However, white people will do whatever they can to mysticize Native American culture. And I don't know much about Native American culture, but I have respect for it, and I do think it's beautiful culture. But I would never over mysticize it.
Right.
What Chief Cornstalk had basically said when he died was that he hoped this was the end of a battle. And hang on, I left my phone in the other room. But basically said that, like, he didn't utter a curse. He just said what any leader would say before he was executed. The words of the curse, which I didn't even bother to look it up because it actually comes from a play that was written for the 151st anniversary of the battle. So I really think that the whole curse of Cornstalk and Mothman being this ancient Native American spirit is just a case of white people who are over mysticizing and magicalizing Native American culture.
You know?
And I'm not going to be part of that. I will acknowledge that that's one of the theories because factually that is a theory that people have proposed. Not factually, Cornstalk never uttered a curse.
Right. So, what can you do? You know, honestly, when you say that, it does low-key kind of give Skinwalker vibes when you say that.
Oh my god, it does. Oh my god.
Yeah.
See, we'll get into that another...
Yeah.
Yeah, because like man, bird, but not right. Kind of like the not deer.
Right, exactly. So, like, when you say... That's the first thing I thought of when you said Native American was like, oh, okay, kind of like Skinwalker.
Yeah, but like that's the oh my god.
That's not in Arizona or somewhere.
Yeah, that's the Navajo people, which I do know that they have a name for themselves that they prefer to be called. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately I am on my 4th or 5th glass of wine for the day.
Wow, you can't rightly recite.
Play elevator music. Paul, just talk amongst yourselves.
So anyway, since our host is... speaking of unprepared hosts, I met up with this guy. Oh, well, he's back. Story for another time. Wait, never mind. He's typing. Oh, and then, so here's what we're gonna do, guys. So, what we're gonna do is DJ's gonna cut this.
Dine. They're the Dine people.
Dine, okay. Party.
That's D-I-N-E with an accent, and I hope I'm saying that right, but I think it's Dene.
Okay.
Dene people. That's very much from their culture. But if the skinwalker is a real creature, who's to say that it's not also in West Virginia as well as in Arizona, New Mexico, areas like that.
Right.
And my last theory is a celestial being, and by celestial being, I mean either an angel or a demon.
Okay.
So the abject fear and premonitions of disasters that are instilled by Mothman could mean that he's either of those, because both are. So one is a warning. I mean, throughout the Bible, angels appear as warnings, and demons appear as causes. It's a man-like being with wings. Description used for both angels, demons, and Mothman. And also, as we've learned fairly recently on TikTok, biblically accurate angels are scary as all get.
Oh, for sure.
And I personally love the CBS series Evil. And in one of the seasons, they do have an angel, and it's not exactly biblically correct, but it's terrifying, and it kind of looks like this. It's gray, and it has very hollowed out eyes. It doesn't really have a mouth. It has huge wings. So, like, we think of angels as being these people, these beautiful people with wings and halos, but what if they are not? Or it could be a demon, which are equally terrifying.
Right. I like that theory.
And actually, the film, The Mothman Prophecies, I just know this about reading about it. It comes off as more demonic than it does as this ultra extraterrestrial or monster thing.
Right.
In fact, I know this from the trailer because I haven't watched it, but I have watched the trailer. There's one part where Richard Gere's wife, played by Deborah Messing, dies, and he's in the hospital. He sees all these pictures of a winged creature with red eyes. And this nurse walks in, and she's just died, and he goes, "Oh, she knew she was drawing angels."
Oh my gosh.
And so now for our outro. Exactly 13 months to the day after his first famous appearance near the power plant in the TNT area, the Silver Bridge collapsed and Mothman vanished from Point Pleasant, but his presence seemed to linger on. Witnesses suffered for long after he was no longer seen. The Scarberrys divorced within 10 years of the sightings. Mary Heyer and other witnesses were dead. Countless others continued to be plagued by depression and nightmares. But what was Mothman? Experiment, mutant, alien visitor, an old world spirit, an angel offering warning, or a demon foreshadowing death? What cannot be dismissed is the long cultural legacy he has left behind. As appearances decline, we are left with his memory and to wonder, who was he? They? It?
Oh, gotta get those pronouns right. It's 2023.
And my sources for this were The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel, The Mothman of Point Pleasant, a documentary film by Seth Breedlove that is on Amazon Prime, The Mothman on Cryptid Wikia, The Mothman Wikia, and of course the Mothman Silver Bridge Point Pleasant Wikipedia pages. And that's my story.
There it is. So, what do you think he was? What was your favorite?
I really subscribe to the I'm somewhere between John Keel's ultra-terrestrial psychic connection and a mutant. I do think he was a real physical being.
Yeah.
But I don't think he was an alien. I don't think he was an ancient Native American spirit. I don't believe he was an angel or a demon. I do believe he did have some message for us. But I think he tried to get that across. I mean, I mean, his appearances all seem to do that, especially. Yes, I'm pouring another glass of wine. Stop looking at me like that.
I'm not judging. I would never judge anyone for pouring another glass. I mean, that would be the pot calling the kettle black.
It's very much the pot calling the kettle black. But yeah, I think he's somewhere between. But Paul, what are your thoughts?
I like the angel demon theory because that just sounds like fierce. Like, that makes it seem like he's like ethereal, an ethereal being, and like he comes and goes. See, the whole like mutant thing, it just sounds so kind of like dirty and gross and grungy, which also like I'm kind of low key here for there.
But I think it kind of makes sense, especially like I think like the fact that his appearances ended so suddenly sort of lends itself to a physical being. Sort of because if he was like mutants, any kind of mutant, I mean like the Zorse, is that what it's called? Or the Hebra, like the mix between the horse and the zebra. They don't live very long. the Liger and the Tyan.
Yeah, I've heard about those.
They don't live very long. So who's to say, like, it could have died and, like, or I do kind of like the ethereal, the celestial being, an angel or a demon, just because he has been noted around 9/11. Chernobyl is a big one, the H1N1.
No.
Yeah.
The harbinger of whatever.
The harbinger of doom and destruction.
Oh gosh, spooky. I'm here for it though. I love the spook, you know.
So, Paul, now that you know all about Mothman, smash or pass?
Definitely smash, like I said.
Yes. Oh my god,
Definitely
yes.
leather daddy vibes. I want that steak afterwards. I'm here for it.
Oh my god, like, if Mothman showed up on my front porch and screeched at me, I'd be like, yes, I will marry you.
Yes. And you know that Mothman has one of those leather harnesses that the leather daddies
He doesn't even he does not just have a leather harness. He has the leather shorts, he has the boots, and he has the cap. Which I'm not normally into leather daddies, but for Mothman, yes.
And if you don't know what a leather daddy looks like,
just look it up.
Google image it, and I swear to you, it'll be the first image there, and that'll be Mothman. Like, well, yes. So,
Paul, anything for the greater good on this episode?
Nope. It was good. I loved learning about the Mothman, and I'm looking forward to whatever spooky cryptid or whatever you have in store for me next week.
Yes. So, like, subscribe to our podcast. If you're listening to iTunes, please give us a 5-star review. That really will help us get to the top of the charts. Tell your friends. Please get them to join in. Please share along. If you want to follow us on social media right now, so far we have an Instagram. It is, let me get the Instagram handle.
While he's getting that up, you can follow me personally on my Twitter at Paul_today. That's PAUL_TODAY.
Our Instagram is Crypts and Corks Pod. We also, if we would we love to have listener stories?
Yeah, for sure. Send us your listener stories. You can Instagram DM us.
Don't Instagram DM us. We actually have a Gmail account.
Oh, yeah. Send it to the Gmail.
Our Gmail account is cryptsandcorks@gmail.com.
We can save the Insta DMs for the nudes. Wow.
Oh my god.
Full circle.
But yeah, if you have stories or recommendations, please email us. If you would like to follow me personally, my Instagram handle is at DJ Chessy, CHESSEY Powers, P as in Paul, OWERS. You really don't have to follow me on Twitter because I never tweet unless it's my alt Twitter. Again, if you're my family, I don't have an alt Twitter and I am a virgin. And I think that's everything for the greater good. Speak now or forever hold your peace, Paul.
No, I think we're good from this episode of the pod.
All right, so everyone, we will see you next episode. And remember to keep your crypts tight.
And your corks loose.
Bye.